So Florida is Trump's center of power? Is that because of his mansion?
Miami Vice, the Magic Kingdom, spring break, alligators, and retirement homes.
Of course, the alligators, bro.
These things are often associated with Florida, but Florida is changing.
If you look at Miami right now, it's definitely a migration. They're coming from everywhere, most notoriously New York and Chicago.
It has become a tech haven as well as a financial services haven.
Okay, so a lot of the people who went to Florida were going from New York and Chicago, right? So you're telling me that a bunch of Democrats went to Florida and Florida just became more red?
But
The state has really done an effort to court financial workers, to court hedge funds, to court private equities, to court banks, and create what we call Wall Street South.
Florida has also transformed into the center of the Republican Party.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. However, when he said that Florida becoming a powerhouse, what did he call it again? Hold on. The Wall Street of the South. Yeah, actually, that actually it's fitting because I was gonna argue that Texas would fit the description a little bit better, mostly because in Dallas there's gonna be an exchange opening soon. So, but anyway,
The rise of Florida Republicans really begins with COVID, when the whole country was locked down, but DeSantis had decided to keep Florida open and went around bragging about what he called the free state of Florida.
The great state of Florida.
Trump has made Mar-a-Lago the center of the United States government.
bro, that's Trump's mansion. I thought that was the White House. What? That looks like a palace. That doesn't even look like a mansion.
Made Mar-a-Lago the center of the United States government. And the people in his administration have roots in Florida.
The whole ethos of the modern Republican Party is Florida. Trump himself is Florida.
So, why is Florida so trendy? And with a second Trump presidency and Republican majority in Congress, will Florida politics spread to the rest of the country?
You know, honestly, hopefully. I feel like Florida is probably the most sanest state in the country. Then again, me saying that sentence, I've, I can't believe I just said that sentence. What? The people who fight alligators, uh, I don't know. GTA in real life is the sanest state. I can't believe it.
In the wake of the January 6th riots, Trump finally left, returned to Mar-a-Lago, holed up there in a kind of political exile. But while he was down there, it became clear that Trump still had an iron grip on the Republican Party.
Mar-a-Lago has become the MAGA Mecca, right?
Mar-a-Lago is located on a stretch of this barrier island called Palm Beach. And up and down that island, there are people with vast fortunes who have been supporters of Trump's presidency.
People like Fox News host Sean Hannity and Neil Cavuto.
We're talking about Nelson Peltz, Steve Schwartzman.
John Paulson, Tomas Peterfy.
There has been really this combination of people from captains of industry, captains of finance, who are all converging. Mark Zuckerberg, Scott Bessent, Mark Anderson of Anderson Horowitz, the venture
I can't take serious that guy's head.
capitalist. He says he now spends more than half his time in Mar-a-Lago.
You know, it's so weird because as far as I'm aware, Trump had significantly less funds to campaign with compared to Kamala Harris. He had way less funds, which makes me assume that it's just basically it was a bet that a few rich guys decided to make on Trump, and the bet paid off. So, but the fact that Zuckerberg is included there is crazy.
I remember talking to a Trump official who explained the appeal. He said, "We've got no masks, no lockdowns, good restaurants, great beaches, And Donald Trump being here is just the cherry on top.
It's not just Trump acolytes who are nesting in Florida. From 2020 to 2023, 158 companies managing $993 billion in assets.
What? You know, I knew that. Okay, hold on. All I knew was that a lot of companies left California, went to Texas, right? But most of them were either very large corporations and or very small businesses. I had no idea that the same had happened to Florida, but this is ridiculous. $1 trillion went from New York to Florida?
Assets moved their headquarters out of New York. 104 of them moved to Florida. Many notable names expanded operations there as well.
But the biggest name that is part of the Wall Street South movement is Citadel, the hedge fund and market-making firm created by Ken Griffin.
His fortune is over $40 billion, and he has a record of being engaged in the community, not just philanthropically, but also politically. In the letter that he sent to all of his employees, he used this phrase: Miami embodies the American dream.
The biggest
To be fair, I don't think he's entirely wrong. I mean, I've never been to Miami, so I can't say for sure, but for everything I've heard, I think that's pretty accurate.
question is, who actually benefits from that American dream?
The dream-like wealth flowing into the state also has its downsides.
The money going to Florida is definitely driving inequality. If you're a billionaire, chances are you can get a direct benefit from that American dream. But if you're a person who was driven out of your home because an influx of wealth made prices unbelievably more expensive, maybe you don't benefit as much. One of the biggest draws in Florida is that it has no state income tax. But property taxes are pretty high, especially if property values coming up. There's also all sorts of consumption-related taxes. Some would consider Florida one of the most regressive tax systems in America.
Florida's regressive tax system means that low-income families pay almost 5 times more in taxes than the state's highest earners. Then look at the U.S. average.
Okay, that is wow. In a way, I can see why they do it this way, because they're literally affecting less people. Well, they're being less direct about their taxes. But at the same time, I can definitely see the consequences.
The gap is far smaller. The state's low tax reputation applies largely to the wealthy. The states at the bottom of this chart are less equal. Now look at Florida. This shows that when indexed across the nation, Florida's tax code exacerbates inequality more than any other state.
If you look over the past 5 years, in Miami specifically, home prices have gone up almost 70%. They have gone across the board to parts of the Panhandle, Jacksonville, Naples. Almost 1/3 of Miami is severely rent burdened, which means that they spend more than 50% of their income in rent.
More than 50% of their income in rent. Tell that to a Californian, bro. Like, oh boy. Yeah.
Florida's housing issues are only compounded by its geography.
Florida is on the front line of vulnerability to rising sea levels, warmer temperatures that are
Right, I forgot about this. Isn't Florida supposed to disappear in like, what is it, 30 years? No, 50 years, something like that?
causing more hurricanes.
If you're rich, you can afford to build yourself some sort of bunker, or you can self-insure. If you're not, then either you buy very expensive insurance, or maybe you're completely uninsurable. So if disaster hits, that's basically billions and billions of dollars that are razed to the ground.
But the mounting liabilities aren't slowing Florida's growth.
The gain in population that Florida has seen recently resulted in Florida adding a seat in the House of Representatives in Washington. So population gain means more people looking out for Florida's interests in the capital.
That's true. I think Texas and I forgot what other state also gained a few seats.
Florida is the third most populous state in the United States, and it's also one where the population is growing the fastest.
Wait, Florida is the third most populous? Because I know California's number one, Texas second, and I thought New York was third.
And an important contingent of this population is the Hispanic community.
In South Florida in particular, the makeup of the Hispanic population is mostly Cuban Americans and Venezuelans. By some accounts, more than half of the Hispanic population in South Florida in particular voted for Trump.
And I really do believe there are very important lessons for America from the good governance that you see here in the state of Florida, particularly at the state and county level.
Now, to be fair, in this previous elections, I think it was Hispanics that voted mostly Republican. It was most they were mostly voting Republican, and a lot of Democrats were very concerned and were like all trying to understand why that was the case. Like, come on, seriously?
Florida's governance is dominated by its governor Ron DeSantis and his fellow Republicans, who have been steadily gaining control for years.
Part of the way that Ron DeSantis distinguished himself once he became Florida governor was to pick a bunch of cultural fights. The most famous way was by picking a big fight with the Disney Corporation, claiming that they were too friendly to gay people, and wound up trying to take away some of their tax breaks.
They weren't too friendly. Disney was literally giving money to schools so that they would promote more transgender ideology, specifically transgender ideology, and that by its nature is sexual education, something which should not be taught to children.
If you go back to Florida in 2000, it was famously the scene of the hanging chads, the tied election between George Bush and Al Gore.
And we can look at that moment when Florida increased its profile on the national stage as playing a meaningful role in the presidential election.
Florida was the prototypical swing state, but in the years since then, it's moved steadily to the right to the point that Florida today is just a deep red state. Even the centerpiece of Democratic Florida, Miami-Dade County, which has been blue for decades, wound up going to Donald Trump this time around.
Yeah, people got tired.
Florida has become a bastion for some of the most conservative policies in the nation. You have one of the biggest school choice programs across America. You have a massive crackdown on undocumented workers. You have policies on
How do they how do they crack down on undocumented workers if most of their population actually never mind. I think most of the population are refugees, right?
education. We kind of determine what should be taught in terms of gender policy in classrooms. Republicans are using the Florida as one of their biggest laboratories in the nation.
If you look at who Trump is bringing in to run his next administration, the bulk of the people seem to be from Florida. Everybody from Susie Wiles, his chief of staff, to Marco Rubio, his nominee for Secretary of State. Mike Waltz, a Florida congressman, is going to be his national security advisor. Pam Bondi, Trump's attorney general nominee.
Damn, I had no idea that Florida was this influential. Basically, everyone he's assigning to his cabinet is from Florida. It's Floridian.
With all eyes pointed towards the state, the Republican policy experiments brewed in Florida could soon be exported to the rest of the country.
When you have the international coverage of Trump planning his next administration in Palm Beach, the world thinks of it as a center of power.
Donald Trump himself has said he considers the White House, quote unquote, a total dump. That probably means he won't want to spend a lot of time there. I think there are few places in the world where you're seeing such a combination of money, power, wealth, politics, all mixed together, all influencing each other. This is not
Bro, he better not go golfing again this administration. And I know he won't, because clearly you can see that in his presidential picture. He's locked in, as they say, this time around. Because last time, bro was just chilling. He wasn't really. I don't think he was. I don't think he took it serious in his first 4 years.
Not your grandmother's Florida anymore.
Oh man, I am very curious though. I'm curious as to how Florida might develop, and if if what they say is true. And I mean, we've already been seeing effects of it. Companies becoming more conscious of woke ideology and becoming anti-woke. It might be true. The US might enter a whole new era, and maybe, just maybe, the entire US might become one large Florida. Imagine people just doing whatever they want, doing the wildest stuff, while at the same time having conservative values. Sounds like a great time to be alive.